Good day. This is Brother Lyles, and this is Minding My Business. And in my life, I have seen situations where I would see uh, a person operate in a way that I thought was just totally wrong, and I would be like, um, why are they doing that? Why are they acting like that? And I would later on, after I either talked with them or I seen the situation that they were in that caused them to act that way, I had to say, hey, I judged that situation totally wrong. Let me give you an example. You know, in the black community, you have the Korean uh, beauty supply stores where when you go in, time you walk through the door, the Koreans are asking you, hey, what are you here to get? Well, what you want to purchase, or following you around the store and stuff, and a lot of our people definitely get annoyed with that, but they still keep coming back because obviously, our black people haven't been able to reclaim that part of the their neighborhoods when it comes to beauty supply. They haven't been able to reclaim it. At one time here in North Carolina where I live, we had Dudley, and we had Dudley beauty supply stores all over the place. But you know that's that's gone. So we got the Koreans. So one would say the policies that looking at the policies of the Koreans, they would say, man, they don't like that policy. But I'm gonna give you a different scenario or a different situation. It was this back in the day, back in the mid to late '90s. Uh, CDs and cassettes were still being sold, so they had this and records. They had this music store, um, boutique as they called it, in here in this in the city that was owned by this black woman. And I remember when I got back, to 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 here, to the city, um, I went I went there for the first time to look at some of her selections. So when I went into the store, time I got in there, one of the persons that worked there, they asked me. They said, uh, what are you here to buy, sir? What are you looking for? And I was like, man, I haven't even got in the store. And then as I started looking, I seen that all the music was, if it wasn't behind the counter, it was in these behind these glass cases that was locked. And so I was like, so only thing you could do, you could just look at it the from behind the it was behind the glass. You had to look at it, and I was like, that's kind of strange, right? Because it was a black business. And so I said, I'm just looking, right? So I start looking through the glass cases and everything, and I said, what about that one, right? And so they came over and they unlocked it, and then they pulled it out and they let me see it, right? They said, are you gonna purchase it? I said, no, I don't think so. So they put it back and they locked it. I'm like, because sometimes you go in the store and you might grab something, you walk around with it, right? And then you might look at something else, right? But they was like, no, if you ain't buying it, we're putting it case, right? So anyway, I went on. I did end up purchasing something, but I left and I was thinking, oh man, these people, they just like the Koreans, man. I'm like, I don't know about that, right? So I was forming an opinion about that was, and I'll tell you the rest of the part. So anyway, that I decided, well, me and my wife had said we wanted to support black businesses, right? Um, and so I went back again. But this time when I went back, the lady that owned it, she was there. So same thing happened, but it was just her. Well, she had other workers, but she was there too. And so she said, I said, do you have such and such, cassette tape or whatever it was? She said, oh, that one? She said, oh, it's over here, right behind the glass, right? She said, are you looking to purchase? No, I was just seeing if you had it. She said, okay. She said, so again, I went over to the glass cases and whatever. She said, do you see anything? She said, these are all new. She said, all this stuff is old stuff. She said, this is new. So this is so she was kind of like directing me where to go. And I'm like, I kind of was feeling like, hey, can I just browse around or whatever? So I was thinking that in my mind. So anyway, I was browsing around, for a little bit, and I know it was just looking at me. It wasn't saying anything. So I said, well, let me go ahead and purchase something so I can get out of here or whatever. So anyway, when I went up to the counter, I told her, I said, well, yeah, that one that I seen, I told you about, I would like purchasing that. So she unlocked and she said, I know you, this is the lady that owns it. She said, I know you probably saying, man, she trying to rush me out here. She said, no, that's not what it is. She said, I've been in this business for a long time. She said, I started this business a long time ago. She said, and when I first started in our community, in the black community, she said, I kind of let people just come in the store, browse for a long time and not buy, they wouldn't buy anything, and I had my music out. She said they would start picking up records or CDs and stuff that they was supposedly they was gonna buy, but then some of them would be shoplifting some of the stuff because I had all these people browsing. And she said some people come in and be holding conversations with her or conversations with other customers or whatever, and she would get distracted. And she said what happened was she was losing product, and also some of the people that was picking up this stuff, they was ending up not buying it. They would set it down or whatever. And then she said there would be street people that would come in because it might be too hot outside and they want to come in and they would want to talk or whatever just to cool down, or it might be too cold. And she said I started losing business because then they would be going through the store asking people, hey, can you let me borrow this and whatever, and people like, I don't want to go over there because I'm having to this. And so I had to change my business model or I would have went out of business. She said I discovered I need to lock everything behind glass, and if you really interested in buying it, you go through the pain of me having to come unlock it and get it. And then if you're not gonna buy it, then I'm gonna put it back. And also when you come in the store, I'm asking you, hey, what are you here for? And I'm not really talking about any other thing that's gonna keep you in this store talking for whatever time, and you won't buy anything. So I thought about it. I said, you know what? I was totally wrong. I judged that situation totally wrong. I can see. She said I wouldn't be in business as long as I have if I didn't change my business model because of our people. So I started thinking, man, next time I gotta be weary of making a judgment on certain things before I get all the answers. And in some instances. It's not in every instances that you're gonna have to take a long time to form a opinion. But in some things, we have to be very careful. I have learned that. I've learned that, like even like with uh, 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 making different purchases or partnerships, different things like that. You have to be careful. How many times have I seen family members go into business with each other and it turned out terrible because you judge that because they are a family member, oh, it's gonna be okay. No. I remember I told my mom one time, I said, you know what, Mom, if me and you, from the things that I seen in life, you know, if me and you went into a business together where we had to make substantial investments, I said we would get a business contract drawn up by lawyers, and then you get your lawyer to look at it, and then I would get a lawyer to look at it, and then we would sign it. And I said, and that way, when something down the line happens, so say, you know, the contract says for the first 5 years or first 3 years of this business, any profits that is made by this business, the money will go back into the business. It will, you know, whatever. And that way, if later on I would say or you would say, well, I need to borrow some money out of the business, either one could go to the contract and say, no, we can't do that. The contract says this. Can't do it. Can't do it. And if the one got mad, they couldn't get mad at nobody but they self, because they signed a contract that said that. And so it would require them to really think on that. And some people would say, oh, that's cruel. But how many families have fell out because of that? Anyway, this way they couldn't fall out with nobody but the contract because they signed it. But I have seen that, right? So you will make a judgment on somebody. Say, oh, you would actually get your mama. Yes, I would, because I would want to keep our relationship going. Right? That's what I want to do. It's the same way with a marriage. All these things, doing business. Okay, for instance, they have this thing in the black community where people say, don't be talking to me about life insurance, right? Because you trying to, you know, send me to an early grave or whatever and make money off of me. No, 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 no. How many times I've seen this with my own eyes, where an individual, he or she was married, they got life insurance on themselves, and they were married, so they put their spouse on the life insurance. So then they divorce, right? They divorce that one, but they forget to change the beneficiary on the life insurance policy, either because they forgot to do it, or their new they would get remarried, and their new spouse would tell them, hey, you know, that's you need to check your benefits. Oh, you trying to put me in the grave and all this stuff. And because they didn't go check and they didn't change that, when they passed away, that first spouse would get that money. Because if you don't change it, right, whatever it says on that document, it goes to that person, and that person can take them to probate court and waste money if they want. They will not win. But if you let this old wives' tale in the black community hold you back from doing business the right way, you're gonna lose every time, right? Because you say, they only want me for my money, or they want me to. That's just foolishness that we engage in. We have to stop that. And when I stop engaging in stuff like that, in procrastination, because we in the black community sometimes we can procrastinate, right? We sometimes that's what it is. It's not that we Sometimes we do make bad judgments for sure, but it's that we procrastinate. We procrastinate. Okay, for instance, okay, like today, in the era that we living in today, with all the stuff that's going on in the world today, and people just really having some shady stuff that they've been involved in. If I had a daughter, I would tell my daughter, if you start dating a man, you need to get ask them to uh, uh, give you a you need to do a background check on them. Do a background check, because how many times have people I've seen relationships where they would say, "Oh, I don't I'm single or whatever," and then one would get in a relationship with them and then find out that they did have children, that they did have a criminal background. Now, of course, if you don't marry them, you can still, you can just, but I'm saying, but once you have married them and then all this stuff come out, then it's kind of too late, because then now you're gonna have to divorce them, and then you're gonna have to go through that, and especially if y'all had children. So I would even tell my sons, before they would if they would go that extra step, or they was gonna get serious, tell the person that you with, I'm gonna give you a background check on myself, just for the fact that I also would like to see a background check on you, because a lot of times, just like I said, you know, people can, there's some shameful things or bad things that people have done that they quote unquote say, I can bring myself to tell you that, right? But you just judge it off the thing that they look nice, or they talk nice, or they smell nice, or whatever, and you just look there and say, oh, they couldn't have got involved in anything, and then you get involved in something with them, and then you be like, oh my goodness, I would have never believed that they would have been involved in something like this, but because you 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 judge by looks only, then this is what you get. This is what you're gonna get, because you didn't want to take the extra time to do what you needed to do, right? And this is that's definitely things that I have learned. Don't In this life, don't judge a book by its cover. Do not judge a book by its cover. They said a lot of the elite special forces units, people would be surprised of some of the type of uh, uh, operators that they have, what they look like. They said if you seen some of the operators, they wouldn't be the typical person that you would see. Somebody 6'4" Superman or whatever. They said they might just be an average looking Joe, but could be one of the most deadliest uh, uh, soldiers, sailors, Marines in the world, because that's what made them deadly, is because they were unassuming. You judge the book by a cover. Oh, he couldn't be this, or she couldn't be this, and that wasn't the case. So, and that's not to say that we go on and we making intense uh, 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 dive into every situation, but it's some things in life you can't just rush off and say, oh, that's what that is. Oh yeah, she uppity. That's why she got everything. She bougie. That's why she got everything locked behind the glass or whatever. Oh, she walk around with a sidearm on her. She trying to scare you out of her store. No, maybe she was attacked. What about that? Maybe she was robbed. Maybe something else happened. Unspeakable things happen, and so you know that's why. So just be aware of that. Be aware, and that's not to always say that sometimes the actions of that person still you're gonna agree with. You might still say, well, I still wouldn't have reacted that way, but that's you, right? And so really, in this life, you got to we gotta get into the habit, and I need to do it more often. I definitely have, like I said, changed my ways and some of the things I do, but sometimes I can do more critical thinking myself. One of the things definitely when you are on YouTube, right? And I've come to understand that after years of putting out content, right, and then going back and thinking about a video that I made, and I like, you know what, that information that I put out, I should have did a little bit more research on it, because I formed an opinion and gave an opinion on something that I didn't have a whole of facts on it, and that's why sometimes I you'll see certain things that happen that I, you know, on my other channels, because this channel, I just started this channel, but I have another channel, right? And I would say, man, I wish I could just take that video down, but then I think about it, I was like, no, because what that leaving that video up will let other people that see it understand that over time we can say that we sometimes can be wrong in our assessment of things, and later on we can change that assessment of how we looked at certain things, right? And I think about you know looking at the uh, Vietnam War. I remember I was born during the Vietnam War, and so I heard, uh, growing up, a lot of the propaganda for and against what happened. But I remember I kind of, just like a lot of people, I had formed a really bad opinion of the Vietnamese people until I went back as a young man. And I don't know why this just came across Parade magazine. I would say back in the day, it used to come in the Sunday paper. It put out a lot of what people. It had a section in it. It was called News of the Weird, but it was history. And I remember one Sunday morning I got it, and they had News of the Weird, and they said, "Did you realize that Ho Chi Minh uh, fought with the United States in World War II against the Japanese, and that he was actually like a spy for the United States, and that he, after World War II, he asked the United States to make um, Vietnam like the Philippines, a territory of them." And he said at that time, him and every other Vietnamese could recite the United States Constitution verbatim, and that they commonly went around waving the American flag, and they even showed a picture of him holding the American flag, and that he said only thing he asked them was to stop funding the French, right? If they didn't want to give them their independence, he said just stop funding the French and we'll just beat them fair and square, but America wouldn't. And I said, so you telling me that the Vietnam War could have been avoided if America would have just, he wanted to be a territory. So that changed my whole opinion, just seeing that. And I've learned just be, same thing with 9/11. I remember when I just like everybody else was caught up. And I remember when the 9/11 truthers and stuff came out, and I was like, man, these people. But when I started sitting down and looking at things that they were saying, I was like, man, I've changed my opinion on them. So just be aware of that, because you might go in hard on something, and then when you find out all the facts, and then you change, then now that you would be trying to change other people, and then understand, oh man, I'm gonna reap what I sowed, because I gave a lot of other people a hard time, not having all the facts, and they're basically treating me the way I treated them. And so that's just something that I think is very valuable for, young person, because a lot of times, um, you can be rash in your youth. But the good thing about the time we're living in today is we're living in the information age. So you should now be able to have information at a quicker pace than what we had, where we had to go read books and newspapers and different things like that to be able to make an assessment before just go off on a tangent, believing or reciting something that's not true. Now, I would say, because of this AI, you definitely need to be careful, because AI definitely is being used to put out pictures and different things now. And you definitely got to be, it can even make books, it can make photos. So please, before you make any judgment on certain things, when you see different headlines and different things, you're going to have to be very careful, because in some ways maybe the preponderance of stuff that's on the internet now can maybe sometimes even muddy the waters on what is true and what is not. But I trust that those of you that will watch this video through to the end, that you will do your due diligence, as I hope to also in the future to come, with a lot of things that's going on. I'll leave it like this, on this note. Can remember the things going on with the what they call the Russian disinformation, and different things that's went on with the election several years ago, and then also the stuff that's going on with the BRICS and all these other things. I can remember at one time, back before the Soviet Union fell, it was, total distrust and total hatred for anything dealing with the Soviet Union, which included Russia, because hey, these are the people that have the nukes that want to nuke us or whatever. But now that the Soviet Union fell, and then the different parts of the Soviet Union broke apart, but the main one, Russia, is still there. I would say again to those that make a judgment for or against Russia, just understand that you do your due diligence again on what is surrounding what is going on with what is okay. Let's look at the thing with Europe, because I really believe, when it's all said and done, that Europe, if the United States and all that stuff hadn't happened with Ukraine, that Europe was starting to develop somewhat of a relationship with the Russians. because of that gas pipeline, the Nord Stream, that was flowing into Germany and other places. So of course, when this stuff came up with Ukraine, that was disrupted. But I really believe that as we see all this stuff that's going on with America and Europe, and some of the stuff that the tariffs and Trump is doing, that don't be surprised that if you get all angry with Russia and all this stuff, and then turn around, that if things keep the way they is, especially with them expanding, that Europe don't jump on the bandwagon and turn its back on America and go back to Russia. I'm telling you, I can see something like that happen, because if the European Union, NATO, and all them had to face Russia on their own without the United States, I think they would clearly make a peace with Russia and turn their back on America, because things between America and Russia are, Europe are not at the best. I could really see that. And so that's just be careful of jumping on any bandwagon. I'm against Russia. I'm against that, right? Just go in and judge the situation rightly, right? Not to say that there might not be some Russian disinformation. It definitely could be. But then there is American disinformation too. All you have to do is look at what happened with Iran, where Trump told them he was trying to make peace, and then Israel bombed him. But then also with Qatar, what did he tell Qatar? And then Qatar got bombed. So clearly both sides, America and Russia, are guilty of disinformation. It's just how things work. But don't let that be the totality of how you think, because if you really look at it, Africa is prospering right now because of their association with Russia. And although I don't believe that the Russians are doing it out of just out of the kindness of their heart, it's clearly a business move. But clearly it has been of a better relationship business-wise for a lot of the African nations now than it has been with the West. So I would just leave it like that and say, give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment, please subscribe, and remember, that's just judge. That's not be always quick to judge everything before we get all the facts, especially in these social media sites, YouTube, Instagram, wherever. Thank you.